I think that exiting a business and having a windfall when we're young enough to enjoy it is one of the greatest gifts of entrepreneurship, right? Like most people will work hard their entire lives to finally retire and then maybe pursue the things that they put off, in sacrifice of building that life. Like getting a windfall in my case in my 30s was incredible, but there's a power vacuum that comes, right? I've spent my whole life working and building and grinding, and all of a sudden there's this just wealth of space where all of a sudden, yeah, I get really bored, right? I don't know who I am without my company. I've got to rework my identity and find out, if I'm not working, where does my value come from? So there's some of those things going on. And then as I start my coaching career really started to gain traction. Um, the reality is I was afraid of who I would have to become to hit the next level in coaching.
Mm.
So I went and distracted myself by creating a story that I needed to buy and build another business so that I would have more success to be more attractive to coaching clients. The reality is, and this is all hindsight 2020. Of course, I didn't know that I was doing this at the time, but it was really at the root of it was worthiness issues.
Mm.
I didn't feel confident in my ability to provide value to clients. So I felt like if I built and sold another business, that would finally give me the success that made me worthy of coaching others.
Mm. Yeah, very interesting. I can resonate with that message. I understand the feelings that come up from that vantage point, and I think a lot of people listening would resonate with it. And you don't recognize what's happening until it's in the past, and you have a chance to reflect upon it. So I'm guessing that realization started to become more clear to you in the evenings that you were looking at your business bank balance and seeing $100,000 of expense transactions dissipate from what should be increasing going the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is that uh, you know acquisition entrepreneurship over the last decade or so has really gained in popularity, and my friend Walker Dybel wrote an amazing book called Buy Then Build that talks about the advantages of buying a business versus starting from zero. But one of the things he says in there is, don't buy a distressed business unless you're a pro. It takes a whole lot more to turn around than you maybe think. And the reality is I was naive. I looked at the business. I thought if I just clean up the balance sheet, wipe out the debt, trim some operations, build in some efficiencies, we'd be off to the races and humming in no time.
Mm.
And the reality is, there was a lot of the fundamentals of that business that were broken, and it was a lot more than just clearing the capital stack that was needed to make that thing happen. And so, I think getting into a quagmire and going, okay, this isn't working, and now I am watching again. I mean, $100,000 a month, day in and day out. You're like, wow. I mean, this is my bank account is quickly dwindling towards zero. I've bitten off more than I can chew, and not only that, like I'm an experienced operator. This is not my first rodeo, and everything that I am trying is not working.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the most frustrating places for an entrepreneur to be is like, hey, I have the knowledge and I have the skill set to make this work, but the things that I'm implementing here that I know from experience work aren't working. Like, oh no, now what?
Wow. And so I'm curious, the size of the problem, the de-stressed business, the size and the magnitude of the problem that it was in. Was there a piece of that was maybe almost a bit attractive because, the bigger the problem, the bigger the thing to solve, the more maybe there's almost like a competitiveness nature. Like some of that might come from, flying, doing dogfights in the air with F-18s. Like I'm not sure. Is there some components of your past that you think would have led you to step into that role even more so because of the size of the problem that the business was in?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's no doubt that what you're pointing out there has some merit. I mean, first of all, you know, I carried the arrogance of someone who had never lost truly at anything, right? Like my entire life, I had been in situations where my back was against the wall, and I always managed to come out the other
Mm.
side. And so, and by the way, like that's a superpower. That's really cool to be able to maintain the calm under pressure and come out the other side stronger. But what that resulted in is that I was addicted to risk and I was addicted to chaos,
Mhm.
right? So I would bite off bigger and bigger problems almost because I felt more calm in the chaos than I did in a smooth, peaceful environment. And so I think there was a huge element of self sabotage that caused me to bite off bigger and bigger problems just to test and just to see if I could actually get through it on the other side. And again, this is not a conscious thing. This is all my subconscious running in the background. Our brains are pattern matching machines, and our brains are wired to create subconscious programs that keep us safe. And so, because I had put my back against the wall multiple times and been successful, that was my default operating system.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting, it brings up something that my partner Jason often says, workaholism is the only publicly acceptable form of addiction that exists in North America. And it is very common. And it's especially common in the entrepreneur community because most people start with some very hustle grind oriented idea. And there's long, long hours for very little to potentially no pay or income. And there's this dream or a vision, and you're just pushing everything towards it. And then sometimes we don't know when to take our foot off the gas pedal. And because you don't even recognize that things are coasting now, like the vehicle is moving and you can actually go work on something else. And I think that it's either a combination of, okay, now that this is working and I can see that, I need to go find another thing that I can do to put all that effort and energy in to get that, call it a fix, I guess. But so there's a kind of a variation there. There's either, hey, what more can I do in this thing to make it even better? And everything's working so good, I'm going to change it all to do something totally different and wreck it so that I can fix it again. Or I'm going to go let it sit and ride, and I'm going to go over here and get distracted by this bell and whistle I see on this side of my, the peripheral vision.
Yeah, no, you nailed it, right? I mean, shiny object syndrome for entrepreneurs is real. And I say often, like, show me a bored entrepreneur, and I'll show you someone who's on the verge of true wealth, right? Like, if your business is humming, so you've built systems, you've completely extricated yourself from the day to day, like that is a business that is built to scale and it is on the verge of scaling. And what happens is we get impatient, right? Or we get restless, and we are, like, a lot of us tend to be addicted to the chaos. And exactly what you talked about, we'll throw a wrench in there. We'll go acquire a competitor. We'll fire our marketing team and rebuild our funnels. Like, whatever we do, we always want to be tinkering. And we say it's in the name of optimization, but really it's because I think we are addicted to the stress. And I can certainly say that was the case for me. And then, the other piece is, I hear a lot from entrepreneurs like, "Oh, well, I could never retire. Like, there's no, I'd just be too bored." And in the years since, through a lot of coaching and a lot of therapy and, like, understanding, who I am at a core level, my question now is, what is it you're trying not to feel? Like, what is this busyness? What is this hustle culture? Like, what does this allow you to distract yourself from? And it's usually some deep, you know, core childhood wound or feeling of lack, or a lack of worthiness, or whatever it may be for that person. And they're filling that void to avoid the discomfort of having to sit with those feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. We talk a great deal about retirement from a perspective of it being a word that didn't exist in the English language until the 1890s, and what it was originally created for was effectively to move people who were beyond service life expectancy still working, to remove them with the thinking that we needed to bring in a new person and train them up to skill to replace that position, because that person's going to be dead. They've earned the right to be able to be paid an income for the rest of their life because they don't have much left to give. That was kind of the original thought, and it began with Otto von Bismarck in Germany. And so prior to that, it didn't exist in language, and then it got really gravitated to in the 30s, and then became a part of North American culture. But yet the targets haven't shifted and changed. Life extension has changed, technology has changed, the world has changed, but that thought process hasn't changed, and it hasn't moved with the thinking of the times. And so, my mentor Nelson used to say that he didn't believe in retirement because the root of the word retire is to be taken out of service. And so language matters a lot, and it matters on how we think and what we tell ourselves in our brain. It's not that people don't want to retire, but maybe what they really want is they just want to be able to do something with purpose for the rest of their years. And they want the income coming from other sources to support it. So whether it's an active income you're creating in a new way, or it's a passive income from assets that's generating that, but you can have purpose. And I think there's a big difference between setting a purpose for the last part of your life as opposed to retirement. And so I'm in alignment with you on that, but I think there's even more to unpack there for people to understand and look at it. And language that you use in your own brain and then you convey out of your mouth to the people you talk to has an impact, not only to yourself, but to the people around you.
Yeah, I mean, totally, tons to unpack there, right? But I would argue, number one, rather than sacrificing yourself, and we have this culture of self-sacrifice and delayed gratification, and so many of us are stuck in jobs that we hate. Trading our time for money in hopes that someday we'll hit this magic number and then we can actually start enjoying life. I would much rather build a life I never have to retire from.
Mhm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean working for money. I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is the ability to divorce income and cash flow from our time, right? That really gives us the freedom of choice of who we're going to impact, how we're going to use our time to be of service. But you know, the fundamental idea is that we can create that in the present, and we can pull that timeline forward and go, hey, what if I can align my values and the things that I care about with the work that I'm doing, so that rather than feeling like it's something that I have to escape from at the end of my life, it's something that actually brings me joy and fills my cup up. And oh, by the way, now I'm earning income that I can use to purchase assets that replace active income with passive income.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Well, I'm so excited. We're having such a great conversation. Join us when we come back after these messages, and we'll continue to discuss the impact of getting your mindset and your money in the right place.